everybody watching in the replay. I'm giving everybody time to jump on. All right. Let's see here. What's up, folks? Stat man, what's going on, man? Brazil, I see you. See here, we're still getting some stuff worked out. How y'all feeling this morning? Going through all these different sounds with this not speaking English. Okay. So I'm going through these different sounds with this Hall of Fame reverb from TC Electronic. I often use that when I'm doing like solo stuff, especially live. I'm not sure what you mean. Let's see here. Now I'm actually tuned down to F sharp. This is my open B flat here. That's B flat major, but I was in F sharp playing. Yeah, that's F sharp major. Or G flat major. Yeah, man, all good. All good. What time is it here? It's like 7:30 here. AM. Hey, bro, checked out your lick last week. Breakdown. Hold on here. Go back. I'm on my laptop trying to go back to this message. Breakdown on that Song Your Band album. Shout out to them. Thank you, Parker. I really appreciate that, man. Hopefully you have the whole album. So yeah, Mike, it's like 7:30 a.m. here. How can it translate to 5-string? Good morning, Mama, Dr. Peggy Moore. I see you. Okay. Yeah, I'm Eastern. So how can it translate to 5-string? It's easy, man. So you just go, instead of being here, your position would change to right up under that F sharp here. You know, just regular major 7 chord. We're playing on that B major 7. Then I go up a 4th, down a 4th, or you can go 5th if you want that chord. See what I'm saying? So up a 4th, back down a 4th, then I go a whole 5th. And that's just me doodling or whatever. You find the most, what's up, Tyrone? You find the coolest stuff when you just experiment. Like, take the rules off of the table. I know a lot of you guys are very, very theory heavy cats, but if you take all that theory and all the rules off of the table and just feel free to experiment, you'll come up with a lot more interesting stuff sometimes. What's up, Chris? Who else I'm missing? Yeah, I have the whole album, man. Man, thank you, Parker. I really appreciate that. Hopefully I'll release the second part of it sometime soon. What's Zap? Adamir, I'm a little confused at what you're talking about. I don't recognize your name, so I'm not sure what you're speaking about. Yes, Stedman, if you were to take those chords, like just different chords, and move them around, you can do thirds. You know what I'm saying? You'll be surprised at stuff you come up with. You know what I'm saying? Just experiment. I think that's the cool thing about a lot of people that I know that play strictly by ear. They don't think about what rules they're breaking. So, hold on, I missed something that you said here. Yeah. So, like I was saying, people don't really think, a lot of people who play by ear, they don't really think about what rules they're breaking. They're just playing what sounds good to them in their head. And they're not so sidetracked with trying to figure out. Now, don't get me wrong, the theory and understanding the theory of it definitely helps you to go back to that, so it's not accidental. But a lot of advantage of, because I got experience in both. I know how to, well, I knew how to play without understanding the theory first. And then now, after, you know, studying and all that kind of stuff, I do understand more of the theory of it, but I still have that strong background of playing by ear, and which I rely on heavily. But like I say, that whole thing kind of frees you to play what you hear, as opposed to having to define everything, and everything has to be, you know, put within this box of what it is in theory. So those are pros and cons for me in terms of people who play by ear versus people who only know the theory of it. And that I'm not saying there's something wrong with either one, or not saying that you should do one or the other. There are pros and cons, like I said, for people who do both. Cape Town, South Africa, I see you in the building. What's up, Andre? And I really said that to encourage people who don't do either, like, or you do one or the other. Say, if you only play by ear and you don't understand all the theory stuff, if you're not careful, you can be intimidated by people who do know all the theory. I know for me, my early years in college, because that's when I started learning theory. When I got to college, I went through my whole life when I was playing, learning to play, not really understanding all that music theory and all that kind of stuff. And I felt very intimidated when I got around peers who did know theory and who were able to explain everything that they were playing. And I couldn't do that. It was very intimidating to me. It caused me to second guess the things that I knew. And you shouldn't do that. Just because somebody knows what it's called, that doesn't get rid of the fact that you can play it and you understand it. So just as an encouragement to you guys who may only play by ear, just be encouraged to do what you do well. And if you want to learn theory, I do encourage you, because the more you know, the more you have to pull from. But if you guys only play by reading and by theory alone, and you don't know how to play by ear, I encourage you to strengthen your ear, because that can be intimidating if you get in the right environment. Like, I know a lot of cats that read music and they go to like a church environment where nobody is reading music, everybody's playing by ear. You can be very intimidated, even though you're a virtuoso when it comes to reading music, but now taken out of your element, it can be very intimidating. So just to encourage you guys, wherever you find yourself, you know, in that musical thing, just be encouraged to know what you know is cool, and don't let it discourage you, and don't let what somebody else know make you feel like what you know is not enough. That kind of thing. Always be trying to grow, but you know, don't allow yourself to become intimidated. When you're playing arpeggio scales, do you think of notes, shapes, or formulas? Not really. To be honest, I don't. I only think about that stuff when I have to teach it, to be honest. Who is that asked that question? Stan. Yeah, I only really think about that stuff when I have to teach it. And when I'm learning it, when I'm like looking up certain information to figure out about that stuff. Other than that, I play what I hear. I think my ear is a little stronger, or it's not a little stronger. My ear is a lot stronger, so I hear this stuff, and I hear other instruments, or I just musically, I just hear it from, whether it's from remembering it from another record or something like that. What's up, David? Good morning, man. Whether it's just remembering it from another album or something like that, I I just do it and I figure it out. And I think I start thinking about the shapes. Once I kind of figure out the formula to what it is I'm playing, I start moving those shapes around and trying to put it into context. But I honestly only think about all of that stuff in theory when I have to teach it, because I know I have to explain it to somebody. So now I start trying to figure out, okay, what was this I played? Most of the things I try to stay away, because I didn't start with the theory and my background is not a strong foundation of theory. It comes from more so hearing and playing, hearing and understanding and playing it, and just speaking what I'm hearing as opposed to learning what the theory of it was. You know what I'm saying? So for me, I think about it last, if that makes any sense at all. I think about what I'm playing last. I hear it, I play it, and I think about what it is last if I have to explain it to somebody. But I can get the sound under my hand. So as far as those arpeggios, I hear it, and I just play what I hear. So, and I know that's, you know, major scale, or major pentatonic. And you start to learn how to move certain things around the fretboard. Terrell, what's up, man? El Paso, Texas, I see you. No problem, Stan. So, yeah, those are some of the things for me that work. And again, when you see my videos, I never profess to be this, you know, super technical theory guy. And it's nothing, again, I want to keep adding my disclaimers because I know how it can be. Japan, I see you. What's up? Good morning to you. Thank you for joining. But I never want to come across like, you know, forget all that theory stuff. I don't want to give that when I say I'm stronger with my ear. I'm very much interested in starting beginning bass on. Absolutely, Reginald. Be sure after you finish this to check, or you can go and check out my website. There's a site there if you want to start lessons today. Beginner bass lessons, JermaineMorgan.net. I do have something called Beginner Basics, spelled with 2 S's, that can get you started playing if you're looking to do that. So absolutely. Nigeria, Patrick, I see you, man. Good morning to you. Who else I missed? Did I miss anybody? I'm going back through and see who did I possibly miss. I think I got everybody. All right. So, yeah. So any questions that you guys have about playing by ear, anything along that line I can help you with, or if you're on that journey of learning how to use your ear a little bit more, you know, if you've been watching any of my lessons, that's what we've been talking about, how to apply this stuff. William, good morning. Good morning to you. Was that Martinique? So yeah, any questions that you guys have in that regard, I've been trying to share how to. We've been talking about transcribing, but not in the sense of literally taking a piece of paper out and writing it down, but transcribing it simply by listening and repeating what you're hearing, taking it and ripping it apart. And that's a great way to strengthen your ear. It's kind of like that approach of teaching a baby how to speak with your instrument. It's the same approach. You're listening to how the professionals do it. You're listening to how everybody else plays it, and you take it a little bit at a time. Some of the things you might get right away, some of the phrases you might get wrong, but the more you spend time with it, he said, I can finally tune by ear. So yes, no tuning. Now, I will say on that one, Terrell, I will say just be careful with that, because that can still be, I still keep a tuner with me. Just because we're flawed. If you don't have perfect pitch, you can sometimes still be a little pitchy. Now, I understand what you're talking about. I think my mom showed me how to tune like that. Well, not with the harmonics, but she showed me how to tune like that when I first began playing guitar. Using the harmonics. And, you can get pretty close using the waves from the harmonics. And what I mean by the waves, listen to this. See how that wave went away? But you have to have a reference point. So if you have a piano, what I would do a lot of times when I didn't have a tuner is I would tune to the piano, a piano that was actually in tune. So preferably a keyboard that's perfect. It's perfectly in tune. They give you the highest note on it. And so as far as on your bass, normally that will be if you're playing a regular 4 or 5 string, that would be the G string. They would give you a high G, and you tune that G. You know what I'm saying? So, and you would tune from there. I'm saying G, but y'all know what I mean. So you would tune from there, and that's how I would tune, and I would use the harmonics to do. Of course, my bass is tuned down. So my highest note, especially with the 6th string, is a B, and not the C. It's a high B, and then we go from there. What's up, France? I see you, MC. Dr. Gill. How to get jazz feel? It was the same thing. It's the same thing with the jazz. It's listening to it. I think church bass player is perfect. Thank you for that. I think that the advantage that church musicians have, especially if you grew up in a black church, and it's not a color difference thing, but I'm just saying, with our music, there's so many things infused in church. You kind of get a little bit, and I'm going to answer the question about the jazz, but you get so many different influences in gospel music. Gospel has so many subgenres in like church music. So we could be playing something that feels pop. When I say pop, it's kind of like the pop music that's out, because a lot of the contemporary worship music feels like pop music. And you have the soulful stuff that feels like, old school 70s soul that you can play. You have the funk feel that's in gospel. You have jazz. You even have gospel jazz. You have gospel quartet music, which feels a lot like country music. So there's so many subgenres. So the gospel palette is so wide. If you grow up in a church that plays a lot of different songs, your palette for music sometimes is a little more broad than most other genres of music, because the gospel genre covers so many different areas, because obviously a lot of these different areas of music were heavily influenced by gospel music, and gospel musicians are a lot of the same ones that went into the world and started doing the soul and started doing the early R&B and all of that kind of stuff. So a lot of these things, they are influenced from gospel music. So that's why it seems like a lot of your gospel players have the advantage over a lot of other musicians. Now, when it comes to reading, not so much, because that's not a requirement. If you grew up in the black church, being able to read, depending on, let me be clear, depending on what church you grew up in. Because some people I know in some black churches, they were required to read music, especially if you played a lot of hymns and you sang from the hymn book and that type of stuff. It depended on the denomination and all that. So it's a lot of moving parts in that. You just have to be careful that's why I'm trying to be careful of how I say it. Where you are in the world, and like Southern, where we grew up, in the Baptist church, we didn't have to know how to read and all that kind of stuff. Or I know I got a lot of friends that grew up in the Kojic church and other places in gospel. I would go out and help out at a lot of these different places that were not Baptist. So I had an opportunity when I was coming up to play in a lot of different denominations and as well as non-denominational churches. And if you grew up in these churches, you relied solely on your ear. It wasn't, it wasn't about reading music. It's like, can you play this song? Let me hear it, kind of thing. And so you would go and rely completely on that ear. And so to answer even the question about jazz, how do you get the jazz feel? It's the same thing. You just listen. And when I got introduced to jazz, when I first started to get introduced to jazz and I was listening to music, y'all don't laugh at me, but my introduction to jazz, I thought when I was hearing it on the radio, I like this. You could just play, you could play a whole bunch of random notes and get away with it. That's what I thought jazz was. I thought it was just a whole bunch of musicians playing a whole bunch of random notes that had nothing to do with anything, and I thought they were just, playing just a regular B flat blues, and they was playing a whole bunch of random notes. So hey, let's do some B flat blues since I'm here. So I'll show you what I'm talking about. Let me see. Yeah. It ain't perfect. All right. So this is B flat blues. And just to explain what I meant, I thought everybody was playing like the jazz players were playing random notes. I would hear all these saxophone players and all these other instrumentalists, even guitar players that were playing stuff. At that time, to me, it sounded like they were doing this. That's why because my understanding wasn't there for the music, it just sounded like a whole bunch of random notes playing really fast. And so my initial thing was, okay, they must be playing a whole bunch of random stuff and they're playing it really fast. I like that. I like that genre of music. I could just get away with playing whatever I want. So that was my thought process. I could play whatever I want. I could play it really fast and people, they're going to like it. So that was my introduction to just jazz music until I started developing my ear by listening to more jazz stuff. I didn't have access to records back in the day. So you see what I'm saying? I didn't have access to music in the day. I think it wasn't until I really started kind of getting into guitar. We had my parents had purchased satellite TV, and that's when you could go up in the higher channels and you can listen to the all day jazz type stuff. So when my parents were at work, I would put on like the jazz channels and just pull out my guitar. Whatever song came on the radio, I would listen to it and try to mimic it, because that's the closest thing I had to jazz. And I would hear a lot of smooth jazz songs. I would hear straight ahead, not having any clue to what this was or who these people were. I was just listening to it and trying to pull as much as I could pull away from the music, until I started actually purchasing jazz records way later in my career, or not career, but in my learning stages. But that's how I began to learn how to develop jazz chops, by simply listening over and over again. The way you get good at anything as far as it pertains to music, you have to live with it. You have to live with that genre and understand it in context. You can play it. You can get the sheet music and play it, but getting the feel of it, you have to live with it. You have to be place yourself in environments to be able to absorb that feel and see, okay, this is what they are doing. You can get a lot of it from the albums, but being thrown into those environments, because when I moved to Atlanta and I actually started being placed in environments where people were actually playing it, now all these licks and chops and stuff that I had to put them together in a way that made sense. And not only just playing a whole bunch of stuff, it had to feel good. It had to mesh with what was going on. I had to learn placement, not just a whole bunch of riffs, but learn how to use them, where to add stuff, where not to add stuff, how to stay out of the way, and all that kind of stuff. So when they did call on me for a solo, learning how to put a good solo together and not just be playing a whole bunch of random notes and that kind of thing. And it came from just listening and listening and listening over and over again. So now when I have a B-flat blues thing, instead of rushing through it and just playing a bunch of notes, I try to play something that makes sense. So let's see here. Good morning, Jermaine. You the man representing the low end. Appreciate that, Fred. So let's try this again. And y'all excuse my terrible loop I got going on over here, but I'm gonna try to put together a good solo that actually makes sense. So you can keep going on for days with that particular thing, but the biggest thing is understand it. The chord changes from the 1 to the 4. What's up, Joel? Back to the 4. And you can go diminish. Back to 1. So that's 6 to 2. 5. You can go 1 that way. Or you can go what's up, folks? So yeah, man, that's one of the ways you can kind of approach it, and then everything that I'm playing is based around those chord changes. So if I'm thinking the 1 position, I'll think to that 4. Back to that 1. If you want to take that approach where you plan off all the dominant 7s, back, and then diminish. Finger's still working out. So it's totally up to you how you really want to approach it when it comes to improvising over that kind of stuff. Is really understanding and living with it, because that B flat blues obviously comes from more so blues, and you could take a more blues approach singing versus being really technical with all the that's more jazzy, as opposed to that's more actual blues than, you know, being more jazzy with the whole approach. So what I tend to do is mix the solo I played was a bad example, but normally in a real setting, what I would tend to do is mix the real authentic jazz approach with, I'm sorry, not authentic jazz, but the real blues, like Delta blues approach, with a hint of the jazz, and it'll have a little bit of soul in it. That would kind of normally be my approach to it, rather than just going straight bebop chops all the way through the whole thing. But that's preference for me. That more Delta blues approach would be more at home feel for me, more soulful. So that's the approach that I would take. So, but it comes from listening to it and being able to identify the two, and understanding it. So let me go back. I missed a couple of comments. Yep, that's it, Christoph. Hi there. Let's see here. You know it. All dominant 7 chords. Yep, absolutely. Advantage and disadvantage 4, 5, and 6 string bass. Why do you need 3 bass or more? Maybe it's Sharazan. If I can answer your question honestly, it's for me. The extended range is just that. It gives me more options to use, because I could play the same thing with a 4-string bass. It's just some of the note choices I have to find them elsewhere. Some people are like all 4-string and nothing else. You know, give me 4-string or give me death. That's not me. I just prefer to have the accessibility to the other register, because I guess I come from guitar and I like that the higher register of notes, being able to get there, and it kind of takes away some of the limitations of the other 4-string. with the register, because this is high as I can go on the 4 string. But if I were to take that same progression, it's totally preference. Let's see here if I could do something with that with this little 4 string here. So y'all can see I'm struggling between the two are tuned differently. This bass is tuned down. My 6 string is tuned down and this one is tuned standard. So I'm kind of going back and forth in my brain with the positions of where I'm supposed to be because I just got through playing that bass that's tuned differently. So that's the little struggle y'all see me having going on over here. But it just, for me, when I'm improvising, especially when I play my songs that I write, it's just easier for me to have those options available to me right under my hand instead of having to go. And it can make you somewhat lazier. Some people look at it in that regard that, oh man, the 6 string bass makes you lazy. For me, not really, because I'm still using an entire fretboard when I'm playing 6 string. I don't just stay in one position and play everything because it's comfortable. I like moving around, but I like access to those other chords in a higher register, as well as access to those other notes in a higher register. So those are my takeaways with the 6 string 5 versus 4. And when I'm playing 5 string, maybe I want to play more meat potatoes, but I don't want that 6 string, the last string, the B string getting in the way, or the C string for you guys that tune regular. I don't want that getting in the way of when I'm just playing meat and potatoes, but I do want the access of that low B string. You know what I'm saying? So that would be my difference between all of them. So with the type of music that I play, I more than likely will have a 5 string over a 4, simply because of that low B string. I like to have, can I do the gig with the 4 string? Of course. But I like having that option of the low B string. I just grown to love the option of having the low B string available to me when I'm playing certain music. So especially in the gospel world, that low B string just does something for the music for me. So that's why I like having that available. Let's see here. I missed some. Uh, I mi- I missed some comments here. All right. Yeah, me too. I like to play mixed genre music rather than going. Okay, I see what you're saying, Joel. Nathaniel, I see you, man. Good morning to you. I have a 5 string mainly because I have extra little B in order. I have it. Yep. That's it for me, man. All 7 chords, a preference with 2 minor 7. What do you think about that? All 7 chords, a preference with the 2. I think I understand your question, Christoph. Can you explain a little bit more what you're asking? I'm not 100% sure what you're asking. Love that 4 string. Appreciate it, man. That 4 string limits your creativity versus 6 string expands your creativity and have more options for more notes. In a sense, Stephen, like for me, I would honestly say it's a matter of preference. I ain't gonna jump on that and say that it limits your creativity, because you got cats like Jocko and Victor Wooten who prove that clearly their creativity is not limited to the strings that they have. And so that's why so many people are like, "Hey, it only takes four strings," which to me, y'all know where I stand with that. I could care less. You can play, I think you can get to some places. For me personally, over six strings is like, I probably won't have a bass over six strings because I don't need it. Now there are people who do more things that they play like 12 string basses and they play like, what is it, 18? I think the highest they go, or maybe 24. I don't know. I think I seen something where a cat was playing like 24 strings. Me, I don't personally need that many strings, but that's preference. It all comes down to preference. Maybe that person feels like they can only be as creative with like a 12 string bass. And so it comes down to preference, and we have to be careful that we don't superimpose what we think or what we feel on other people, or limit other people's creativity to what we feel. Victor Wooten and Jocko only felt like they needed, four strings to do what they got to do. And that's cool. I think I've seen Victor play at least a five string bass. I have seen that. Jocko, I don't even know if higher strings were created at the time that he was playing. It probably were. I don't know when the six. I can't remember exactly when this. I know that what's my guy? Anthony Jackson was like one of the founders of the six-string bass world, of the idea, and that came a long way later. But I think at that point, Jocko had pretty much done everything that needed to be done on the four string. So why would he move to the six or any other string amount at that time? So yeah, it just, to me, it comes down to preference. Not to get off on a rant with that, but it comes down to preference. If you feel like you can be more creative with the six string, get you a six string. If you feel like you can be more creative with the four, stick to four. It's really preference at the end of the day. Let's see here. All right. Oh yes, I love the low B. Yeah, I think we all love the extra low end. Yeah, bass players just love more low end. It was just more lows. We want to feel the bass. I love the six string when doing jazz. When do a complicated piece that has some serious runs, that makes it a lot easier for me to get back to the one. Oh yeah, absolutely, Raymond. That makes sense to me. You said 1747. So basically, you're saying all these dominant seven chords, your loop with the second chord, minor seven. Hope I'm clear. Yeah, so what was your question again? I got to go back up, Christoph, to your question. I see your reference with the two minor seven. What do you think about that? Yeah, like when you playing, I guess you're saying with the B flat blues, or just the blues progression, if that's what you're asking. I would prefer to have all seven chords. You know what I'm saying? Like, it just, for the type of stuff that you're playing, it's just that genre of music that the dominant sevens seems, to fit that better, in my opinion. So yeah, I think I'm answering you. I think I'm answering your question correctly. It's just it's a dominant sound. So yeah, you're gonna more than likely have dominant chords all the way. Yeah, was it C minor seven? Are you? It's totally up to you. It's totally up to you. If you want to do the minor seven instead of the dominant seven. I've heard it both ways, and more so in the jazzy approach. I've heard you're more likely to hear the minor seven. In some of the examples that I've heard, you're more likely to hear the minor seven as opposed to the dominant seven. But it really depends on the song, Chris. To me, it depends on, because I've done it both ways. We've played pieces where when the two is a minor seven, and we play pieces where the two is a dominant seven. So it depends on the piece of music and who's composing the music. So it's like a lot of these things, I think that you guys ask about, it depends on the composer and what they're trying to convey in the music. So I don't think it's a right or wrong way to do it. There are ways that people have done it traditionally, but it comes back to what the composer wants to say in the music. So if you want to do a piece, a way to change a bit. Yeah. Yeah, man. So, it's really what you decide to do. If you decide to write a blues piece and you want to use a minor seven instead of dominant seven, I don't think you're going to get sued or anything like that. It's just preference as a composer, what you want to do. And I know some of the traditionalists would get me, oh, you can only do this. And yeah, I say it comes down to what the composer wants to do. That's my guns. I'm sticking to them. What is your Squire Jack? That is your Squire Jaguar bass. Is it original pickup? Yeah, everything is original with this bass. I've done no modifications to this bass. Absolutely none. So everything you hear is like, this is how I bought it. Yep. Only thing I've changed is strings on this bass. I've changed nothing. So that punchiness is natural to the bass. It could go for some new strings, but I'm not in a rush for this bass to have new strings on. I kind of like that little grungy, dirty thing, because when I record certain records, this is perfect. That sound. And no, these are not flat wounds, just in case anybody are wondering about flat wounds.